Want to thank you for joining us for the second day of our conference. We had a really excellent day yesterday of presentations and information shared, and a great happy hour with ghost stories and all types of information. It was really quite a lot of fun, but also a lot of good learning as well. So did want to say thank you to our sponsors. Alicia, if you want to show that video really quickly, and then we'll get started. Excellent. So you can go back to the welcome slide again, and then we will start Patrice's presentation.
Great, that sounds great. And I know we're not quite at 10 o'clock. Is that okay?
I think it's just fine.
Okay, great. Start from the beginning.
So I am going to introduce you. Thank you so much, Patrice, for joining us. Patrice Frey is president and CEO of Main Street America, where she oversees the center's work, offering technical assistance, research, advocacy, and education, and training opportunities for Main Street's network of approximately 1,800 members. Her background includes professional experience in formal education and community development, urban research, and historic preservation. And Patrice has been with the organization for, I believe, 9 years now.
9 years.
Long time, and really has led the organization to really higher heights. And we are experiencing great growth and have a wonderful strategic plan that we're working on, and really excited about the work going forward. And so thank you so much, Patrice, for joining us today. And we are excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And thank you for the invitation to be here today. And Amanda, I want to thank you and Alicia for all your work putting together this conference. I know that is no small feat. And my thanks as well to the California Main Street Board. I know you all have do extraordinarily important work leading and supporting this network. And we at Main Street America are really privileged and honored to work with you. So Amanda tells me I have, 15, 20 minutes this morning, and I've spent quite a bit of time thinking over the last few days about, what would make the most sense to share. So many of you may know that I have actually announced that I am stepping down as CEO on July 1st this summer. I'm gonna be trying a new venture that is actually closely related to what we do on Main Street, but a little bit different. And I started in, I think May 1st, 2013 was my very first day of work. And I was thinking, are there 9 sort of lessons, pieces of advice I might pass on based on, what I've observed, what I've seen, what I've learned myself over the last 9 years. And so this was fun for me to put together. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's meaningful, and I'll go ahead and get started. The first thing that I learned and really believed the moment I was walking in the door is Main Street is economic development. Now, one of the frustrating things I think about what we do is that sometimes what we do is dismissed as, they're Main Street, they're just the people that put on the cool festivals, they're just the people who save the pretty old buildings. Like, that's not really economic development. It's nice, but it's not really economic development. Well, I think we know differently, right? We know differently. And I think I have seen where we're moving the needle, and others are really starting to think differently about the work of Main Street as well. But that work continues. It has to continue. We know that Main Streets are key sources of employment in our communities themselves. And actually, I'm going to show you the next slide. I'm going to toggle back and forth. a lot of times I think we come up against this assumption. Kelly Hummerkauser, our Director of Government Affairs, and I will go talk to the Economic Development Administration, and they'll say, oh, we only fund high wage, high growth jobs. You don't have those on Main Street. So, basically, go away. Well, the reality of Main Street, we know, is very different, that it is not just retail and restaurants, although I will say retail and restaurants are extraordinarily important. But we know, based on some recent survey work that we've done, that actually there's a huge diversity of what happens downtown. And if you look at PPP loans, which are representative of businesses on our main streets, 17% of those came from professional, scientific, and technical services firms. We know that healthcare is a massive piece of what happens on our main street, that real estate and finance and insurance are these are not low wage, low growth jobs. And so I think we continue to push ahead in really advocating for ourselves and helping local leaders, helping state leaders, helping federal leaders understand that no, main streets are actually themselves sources of employment, and they're really key to helping attract and sustain other sources of employment in our communities. So I thought since we have the benefit of being on Zoom, I am really interested in, I have the sense that like I said, we have moved the needle. We are moving the needle. People are starting to understand, I think, especially post-COVID, the importance of what we do. But certainly, if there are ways that we at Main Street America can be helping you make the case, I would love for you to be chatting those. Reach out to me at email. You can reach out to Amanda. I'm sure she'd be happy to know. This is this is our long-term work at Main Street, is really continuing to help people understand the importance of what we do in the economic development space. Another way that I think we can move the needle here is on federal advocacy, and I'm going to say a lot more about that at the end. But okay, let's move on to number 2. So my second observation for you is no pressure, but leadership is everything. And so I'm looking at all of you, right? You wonderful leaders of Main Streets in California. And I want to thank you first and foremost for your leadership. What we do at Main Street is not easy. It is especially not easy during a pandemic. And I got to tell you, I have been so inspired by your resilience, your tenacity, and your leadership over the last 2 years. And I was thinking about, the reason that leadership shows up as number 2 is because when I first started at Main Street, I had a conversation with our field service team. And I said, what is the one thing that will determine whether a Main Street succeeds or fails? And without a question, the answer I got back is leadership. And so I got to thinking, well, maybe like one piece of unsolicited advice I could ask, or I could offer you as leaders. And I thought about this note that I have on my desk. And actually, I've had this note on my desk for a lot of the pandemic. And it's ask for what you need. Because I think a lot of times as leaders of nonprofits, we try and make do, right? We make do with not enough funding to actually do what we're being asked to do. Or we make do with a board member who's causing a whole lot of drama and trouble for us, when we need to go to another board member and say, actually, I need your help with this. Or maybe you care really passionately about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you don't feel like you have the tools to lead that conversation in your community. And so in that case, you need to ask for training, right? So I try and remind myself, ask for what I need. And I would suggest that, maybe that will help you as well. Okay, this is one of my favorite rules of all time. Remember the 20-60-20 rule of change management, and boy, does it apply on Main Street in a major, major way. What we do at Main Street, I don't have to tell you this, you guys know, but this is acknowledging the obvious. This is all about managing change. We manage change. Now, there's kind of a rule of thumb here, which is that in any given situation, when you're looking at a situation in which change is happening, 20% of people are going to be really open to that change. They're going to be enthusiastic about it. They're going to be your champions, your boosters. They're going to be right there with you. 60% of people are gonna be like, I'm gonna hang out and see what happens, but they can be influenced. They can be brought along once they see the groundswell of enthusiasm, once they see the good things happening. And so it's with that 80% that you are really able to lead. That 20% of folks, and I'm just going to be real honest with you, that 20% of folks, we all know them. It's the angry council member you can never do the right thing for. It's a grumpy business owner. It's a unhappy absentee landlord. Those are the 20%, like the 20% sort of negativity vortex that they're never gonna buy in. They're never gonna be supportive. All right, here's what I think our jobs are. Here's what I think I've tried to learn, what I try to live. The first of all is you never want to dismiss that 20% out of hand, right? I think you want to be curious. Like, are they saying something about what I am doing, the change I'm trying to create, that I can learn from? Do I have a blind spot? They see it and they can help me understand it, and then learn and adapt, right? Based on, oh, well, maybe there is something here that I've missed and I can absorb, and this will help to, ensure the success of the overall effort. Once you've done that, move on. A lot of time, my own personal experience, and I bet this echoes the experience of a lot of folks, is you're never going to capture that 20%. They're never going to be your ardent supporters. Your job is to move on and to not let them hold you back. It doesn't mean you ignore them. It doesn't mean you don't listen, but at a certain point, you got to let go and move on. Your job is not to make everyone happy. Your job is to lead change. Number 4, add ecosystem builder to your resume. If you're seeing this and you're thinking, oh man, I don't know if I can add another thing to my resume, let me try and make the case to you why. And I was really excited to see that there's content at this conference that is about ecosystems. Amanda Elliott is doing a great job of actually leading some of this content development for us on ecosystems. The principle here, I don't think we would have ever come to you 10 or 20 years ago and said, hey, you're at the center of this thing called an ecosystem. Like we weren't really thinking about it that way. But the reality is, especially post-COVID, our businesses are operating in such a complex, difficult environment. The world has changed in so many ways. And they need somebody on the ground who can help to connect them with the tools and the resources that they need to succeed, right? And that I think the most obvious answer to me is, well, that's Main Street. That is what we do. We can be the connectors to education and training, to financial capital, to helping folks get through regulation, regulatory barriers at that kind of at the city level, that kind of thing. Doesn't mean we do those things. We're not writing the loans ourselves. We're not, putting on the training on how to do a pro forma, but we're building the relationships with others. We know others that do this work to help support our Main Streets. And I would urge you to take a look. Matt, Amanda, others that are at Main Street have done a really terrific job of developing resources that are designed to help you in thinking about your Main Street as an ecosystem and really serving as that connector role. And this is a great new-ish guide that came out not too long ago, Building a Community Entrepreneurial Guide. And this is really a self-guided training for you that should help you get started. Okay, so controversial, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I think you should reevaluate your events, all right? And so one of the things that I have observed is a lot of times we have Main Streets that are super event heavy. And don't get me wrong, events are incredibly important. I would never say do away with them. I do think that there is a need on an annual basis to continually evaluate whether they're serving you, right? Are these events connected into a broader strategy, a broader change strategy for your Main Street? Are they still serving you? And if they're not, I think it's time to go back to point number 2, ask for what you need and look for other partners to take them on, or maybe say, we're doing this every other year, or find some way to step aside from it so you can continue to invest in really use your time to the highest and best purpose possible. Number 6, advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is the responsibility of every single leader. I believe that. I believe that's true whether you're in Main Street. I believe that's true whether you're, a leader of a Kiwanis group. I know the reality is that systemic racism plays out on our main streets in a way that has often excluded people of color from owning businesses. It has often made folks of color feel unwelcome. I'm not saying this is true of any of your particular main streets. I'm saying that broadly, we know these things to be true of many places. And it is our job as leaders to advance work to correct that. And this is something that we're very committed to at Main Street America. You, I think, have probably seen more messaging, more resources, more speakers to this effect. But I would urge you to think about it in your own community. How can you be a leader, or how can you be an ally to others who are already leading positive change in creating a Main Street that is truly for everyone? There are great examples abound within the network. If you need inspiration, one of my favorite is, this comes from Danville, Virginia. They do an amazing job of creating an entrepreneur boot camp, and then folks go through the boot camp. They learn all about how to start their own business, and then at the end of it, there's a pitch contest, and folks actually get money to open their new businesses. Extraordinarily successful. They've done a very good job of making sure that this program is inclusive of everyone in the community. And as I say, I think a lot of great examples to learn from out there. Okay, number 7, whatever you're doing on housing to support downtown housing, I would say double it or triple it. We know that Main Street's commercial districts are changing in a rapid way. Housing downtown continues to support those commercial activities, can be extraordinarily important in that. We also know that nationally there is a structural shortage in affordable housing and a structural shortage in housing generally. I know that's especially true in California. Like, I don't have to tell you that in California. But I think, again, maybe 20 years ago, we wouldn't have thought, oh, housing, that's somebody else's job. No, it's our job. We need to be thinking about how we are creating, how we are facilitating, how we are supporting the integration, the creative integration and development of housing, especially affordable housing in our downtowns and our neighborhood commercial districts. And this was a really good example I came across in downtown Fresno. All right, we're getting down to short strokes here, because I said, 9 lessons. We're on number 8. This is something that I feel very passionately about, and I'm actually going to be focusing on it more in my next act. And that is that Main Streets can be a leader in mitigating climate change. Many of you, I don't know why you would know this, that before I started at Main Street, I actually led the National Trust for Historic Preservation, their sustainability work. That work was focused on a lot of things that are all very relevant to Main Streets today. And it's my hope that you all take the baton and continue to move forward, press ahead on what I think is an incredibly important issue. So many dimensions of what we do downtown are related to climate. First of all, preserving buildings, inherently sustainable. Huge climate impacts, negative climate impacts associated with new construction. We avoid those climate impacts when we reuse buildings. There's a lot we can do with electric vehicle charging stations, right? Like making you're doing what you can to make your downtown hospitable to EV charging stations. Again, I'm guessing in California, you're like way out ahead on this. Other places in the country, not so much. But a huge both opportunity and I think need. The third thing I would think about is really what can you be doing to support the greening of your existing buildings, and that is both for climate reasons and for financial reasons. We know actually that small business owners on Main Street spend a disproportionate amount of their income on electricity costs or on gas costs, and so helping them reduce those costs is a win-win, right? Helps reduce emissions, but also puts more money back in their pocketbook, allows them to further invest in their business, further invest in the community. There's some really great, exciting examples coming out of the state of Colorado about how their Historic Preservation Division and Main Street and their Department of Energy are working together to really support the greening of Main Street. So you might take a peek at that and see if it offers any opportunities and inspiration for you, I should say. All right, number 9, we're going to transition to another incredibly important point, which is going to tee me up to introduce your own Senator Padilla, and that is that Main Street has massive federal advocacy potential. And Kelly Hummerkauser, again, she's our Director of Government Affairs. She is on the call here, and I showed her these slides last night. She's like, "You're not actually going to show these, are you? Like, these are ridiculous slides." But I am going to show you these slides. So you may know that, or you may not know, we really at Main Street America launched our first independent federal advocacy work during the pandemic. Up until that point, to be honest, we hadn't really had the resources to do a lot. We were following the lead of our parent organization, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and supporting a lot of their advocacy work, which we continue to do. However, the pandemic was a transitional moment for us. We realized that we had to make time, we had to make resource to be at the table federally, to be advocating for resources to support our main streets and recovering from the pandemic. Now, this is where the slide comes in. So I think Kelly and I honestly didn't know what to expect, right? We're like, well, we're going to hop in our, 1997 Ford Aspire, and we're going to see if it gets us where we need to go, right? Like, this is a new program. It's a little bit, we're just trying to get it off the ground here. And we were delighted to see that actually we weren't driving a 1997 Ford Aspire. We were actually driving a snazzy late model Toyota Camry. I know you guys California car people. I lived in California. I went to college in California. I know, cars are king. What I mean by this is actually we had assumed that Main Street had some advocacy potential, right? The Ford Aspire of advocacy potential. We actually got in the car and learned, oh, wow, actually, we have a lot of connections to federal folks, to federal decision makers. A lot of relationships are out there already that we can cultivate. People really care about our issues. It doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats, they care. It doesn't matter if they're in rural areas or big cities, representing big cities. They care. And so we have been very pleased, I think, to see, wow, we have extraordinary potential to direct resources, advocacy resources to Main Streets in a way that I think will really be successful and help you better do your work. So one huge win, and I'm going to give Kelly a whole lot of credit for this, and thank your Senator Padilla. We have secured the introduction of the Revitalizing Small and Local Businesses Act. You're going to hear more about this from Kelly later on today, but basically what this does is it directs EDA resources, Economic Development Administration resources, to national nonprofits who can then get them out to the folks on the ground, the business development organizations like yours that have had an extraordinarily difficult time accessing federal resources during and in the pandemic recovery phase. It's a really critical moment. The House version of this is being introduced on Monday. And I would urge you to attend Kelly's session this afternoon, learn all you can, and we hope very much that you can join us in advocating to ensure that we can bring this over the finish line. And she's going to tell you a whole lot more detail. Okay, so I realize I'm probably talking too much. My request, my plea to you today is to help us upgrade our advocacy vehicle, right? I will never own this car, but I am in love with the Volvo V60 Hybrid Polestar. It is a beautiful car. You can't tell me otherwise. Like, Volvo is winning the design wars. But we need your help, right? In all seriousness, if you don't have a relationship with your local member of the House, if you haven't cultivated a relationship with your senator, please do so. These are relationships, and I'm not just asking in our own selfish interest at Main Street America. These are relationships that over time can really yield benefit to you. Now, earmarks are back. And so, again, I don't think you can pick up the phone and call your representative and say, hi, I'd like an earmark. You don't know me, but I'm here and I'd like an earmark. You need to cultivate the relationship if you don't already have one. But this is a big change in that earmarks were off the table for so many years. And now we're starting to see where existing relationships exist, or where relationships already exist, Main Streets are able to tap into that and get the support that they need. We've seen very great example of that in Maine, actually, just in the recent legislation that was passed that provided them all kinds of funding. So again, you're going to hear more from Kelly on all of this later, but thank you for entertaining my ridiculous analogy about advocacy vehicles. I thought it was funny. Like, I enjoyed.
I love it. I love it.
Even if everybody else thinks it's ridiculous and I've just like embarrassed myself, I don't care, because I thought
no, that was fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so it is now my honor to introduce to you Senator Padilla, your very own senator. We were thrilled when we learned with our partners at LISC that he was going to be willing to to champion this legislation, the Revitalizing Small and Local Businesses Act. And we really see this vehicle as a way of, again, getting resources on the ground to business development organizations like yours that so often are really excluded from existing federal funding flows, and couldn't be more excited that he has sponsored the legislation along with Senator Wicker, who is a Republican from Mississippi. So bipartisan sponsorship of this is extraordinarily important. So Amanda, I think I hand it back to you, and you're gonna tee up the senator's remarks. Is that right?
Yes, thanks so much, Patrice. That was an excellent presentation, and I just love the analogy with the cars and the all thing. So wonderful. So yes, we have a brief video from Senator Padilla, and we are really pleased to have him to support our work on Main Street, and really looking forward to the opportunity for legislation that's really going to be monumental in our California program. So let's go with that.
Hello, California Main Street. It's great to join you to discuss the road to small business recovery. Small businesses are essential to the life of our communities. As your United States Senator, I'm advocating for aid that will help see you through the challenges of the pandemic and into a more inclusive economic future. Earlier this month, we marked the one-year anniversary of the American Rescue Plan, which delivered billions to restaurants, theaters, and other small businesses in California. That funding helped small businesses pay their employees, make rent, and keep our community safe. As we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we must aim even higher. With the bipartisan infrastructure law, we will rebuild our roads, bridges, and transit systems, strengthen our supply chains, upgrade our electrical grid, and improve access to high-speed internet. These investments are critical to meeting the needs of 21st century businesses and communities. We also must counteract the historic underinvestment that has left some communities and businesses more vulnerable to economic shocks. That's why I worked with Main Street America to introduce the bipartisan Revitalizing Small and Local Businesses Act, which would bring new resources for economic development in both urban and rural communities. I look forward to continuing our work together to create economic growth for all. Please enjoy the conference. Hello, California Main Street. It's great to join you to discuss.
All right, well, thank you Senator Padilla. We are so pleased to have him support our work. And we also have another supporter here and one of our sponsors. And we are now going to hear from Jenan Saunders, and she's the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer and Tribal Liaison, I can say that word, for the Office of Historic Preservation. She worked in the Registration and Local Governments Unit of the office prior to her current assignment. Jenan also spent 10 years working in the Interpretation and Education Division of California State Parks. She received her BA in History from UC Davis and her MA in Public History from CSU Sacramento. So welcome, Jenan.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning. We wanted to give a brief update on sort of things that are going on in our office that we thought would be of particular interest to the Main Street communities in California. So thank you so much for giving us this chance to share just a few minutes with you to give you some really brief updates. I wanted to start out by talking about our communications and outreach program, and actually our communications and outreach coordinator, Diane Barkley, is attending the conference because we realize there's such a strong connection between doing more communications, more outreach, and what the Main Street communities are doing. So I wanted to invite you to take advantage of us and take advantage of Diane in terms of sharing information with us that we may push out on our social media feeds and or we do a monthly e-post that we send out to, I want to think we're up to 1,500 subscribers to that e-post, so we can get information out there about what you're doing in your communities and share that more widely than you might be able to do within your community itself. So please feel free to send information to us that we may want to push out there. And I'll put some links in the chat after I'm done talking with email addresses and then links to some of the websites for programs that I'm going to be talking about here. The other thing I wanted to suggest is that if you haven't already signed up for our monthly e-post, you consider doing so. One of the main things that we push out through the e-post are grant opportunities. I believe that currently right now the National Park Service has a grant program going for historic restaurants. So just one example of grant opportunities there may be out there that you might not know of that you might find out about through our e-post. So I'll put a link in the chat to the email address that you would send an email to get added to our e-post email list. And we always tell people we do not abuse our email list. Generally, you'll just get one email a month, maybe an extra one every few months about some special program, but otherwise we don't blast you with things. So secondly, I wanted to talk about the Governor's Historic Preservation Awards. It's an awards program predominantly for projects that take place related to historic resources, but a lot of people don't realize we also give awards for interpretive programs, for interpretive products, I could see us, potentially giving it away. I don't think we have yet, but for a long series of events that have happened over time that have highlighted historic resources in communities. So there's a lot of opportunities there for applying for one of these awards, and then you can use the award to promote your Main Street if you receive an award. So just wanted to mention that. And the current awards nominations for 2022 are going to be due May 6th. So I'll put a link in the chat to the website for that program so you could take a look and see if you might want to submit a nomination for something. And then let's see, next on my list, the State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credits Program. So a few years ago, the legislature passed a law creating a state historic preservation tax credit program. The state, California, had never had one before. There is a federal rehab tax credit program, but not a state one. And then beginning this year, for the first time, they funded that tax credit program. It allows for either 20 or 25% of costs of a rehabilitation project to be taken as an income tax credit. And then you can marry that with the federal tax credit, which gives you another 20% to get a significant tax credit for rehabilitation projects. I know a lot of Main Street folks don't necessarily own the buildings that you're in, but it might be something that you would want to talk to your landlord about, and or there are avenues for those who hold long-term leases to be able to take the tax credits themselves for work they may want to do on historic properties. So we are currently working on regulations for the state tax credit program and are hoping that those regs in draft form will be out for public review by the end of March and then in place about mid-year. And then we will start accepting applications for that program. The federal program is already in existence, so that information is already out there and can be applied for at any time. But I just wanted to let you know about this brand new program that we're frantically working on getting going right now. Let's see, next up, local government workshops. Last year, we had a series of really successful online local government workshops that I thought might be of interest to Main Street folks. I know you work a lot with your local governments, as well as there may be things that are going on in those workshops that would be of interest to you, or maybe you sit on a local historic preservation commission. Those workshops were so successful last year that we're thinking of doing them again every other year. So look for them next year. They're basically a day long, although we broke them up into 2 half days to make it a little bit easier for folks to sort of fit them into their schedules. But I do see us continuing potentially with at least some of them being online. Hopefully we can go back to having some of them in person as well, but keep an eye out for those. And as I said, if you sign up for our email list, you would get announcements about those as they get scheduled. But we are hoping to hold another series of those next year. And let's see, historic properties context statement. So one thing I just wanted to kind of sales pitch a little bit is our office has been working very hard over the last few years developing statewide historic properties context statements, the purpose of which is to facilitate nominating properties to the National Register of Historic Places, or they could also be used for the California Register in terms of providing background information that's useful for preparing a California Register nomination. We have statewide context developed for Latinos in 20th century California, for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in California, and we've just released an RFP for a contract to create one for African Americans in California and properties associated with those cultural groups as well. And those context statements basically provide a lot of the meat of what's required to nominate a property to the National Register. So instead of a person preparing a nomination having to go through, do a lot of research, background research on the larger context for their property, they can focus just on the property and show how it fits within that larger context, but it saves on a lot of research and a lot of writing time and really facilitates the process. And part of the reason I wanted to push context is because our state historic rehabilitation tax credits are going to be limited to properties that are already listed on the California Register at the time that they're being that you apply for the tax credit. So we want to be able to make it as easy as possible for people to get things listed so they can then apply for those tax credits. So those contexts may help facilitate getting properties listed so you can then take advantage of those state rehabilitation tax credits. So that was sort of it in a nutshell. Thank you so much for giving me the time to give you some of these updates. And as I said, I will put links to some of this information in the chat so that folks have those after the meeting. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Jenan. Great information, and do provide those links because I think a lot of us really want to follow up and find out more about how we can take advantage of those things. So thanks so much.
Yeah.
And let's see here. Kelly, are you here in the room? I think there was some information that we wanted to share about the revitalization. Small business. Let's see.
Patrice did a really good job. She alluded to me sharing more about it, and I'm going to have the next session to talk a little bit more about advocacy broadly. So I'll just note here, we shared the one pager in the chat, and we are anticipating more information coming from Main Street America early next week with more instructions on how you can also reach out to offices about this. So we want to make sure that you're prepared to do this work if you're interested in helping support this. So we could talk more about that as well in the next session.